All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we're going to talk about a couple of things with the Jacksonville Jaguars. We'll talk about Josh Allen's new deal, as well as them trying to redeem themselves from a rough ending in 2023, and also kind of talk about the AFC South as a whole, which is something I've done about a lot, considering what's happened over the last week with Stephon Diggs now being traded to the Texans. So now let's get into the Josh Allen stuff. So Josh Allen and the Jaguars, they reached a 5-year, $150 million contract agreement with $88 million guaranteed. Allen talked about winning, his desire to winning Defensive Player of the Year, a Super Bowl, and MVP honors, aiming to surpass his sister's achievements in the WNBA. His new deal gives him an average salary per year of $30 million, ranking him third among all current defensive players. Allen initially was tagged by the Jaguars, set to earn $24 million if he played under the tag. He had a standout 2023 season with a franchise record of 17.5 sacks, leading to his contract extension. Trent Baalke, the general manager, did not offer Allen an extension after the 2022 season, prompting Allen to have a standout, proven season in 2023, and definitely did with 17.5 sacks, like I said. Allen is only the third of the Jaguars' first-round draft picks from 2008 to 2020 to sign an extension with the team. The Jaguars, they had to keep him, and they also brought in Arik Armstead to that defensive line. You still have Trayvon Walker as well, another high draft pick. So, yeah, you look at that defensive line, and, yeah, the big things hopefully for them in 2024. And the other thing, too, is, though, they did lose some guys on defense as well. They lost Darius Williams. He signed back with the Rams. They also lost, I think, Rayshawn Jenkins as well, another guy in the backfield on defense. So, yeah, they also did lose guys. Also lost Calvin Ridley on offense, too. They did bring in Gabe Davis. But, that collapse was not great. It's, again, I said the Eagles' collapse kind of overshadowed that. But the Jaguars' collapse was pretty bad, too. And also Doug Peterson, this is an article from towards the end of March. He talked about the collapse. He said, "I don't know if I'll ever get over it." This is what he said at the NFL League meetings. For me, I think it's going to be my motivation, my fuel moving forward. But, yeah, they did lose Calvin Ridley, Rayshawn Jenkins, Darius Williams. But they did bring in Armstead, like I said. They also brought in Mitch Morse to bolster the offensive line, somebody the Bills released. Darnell Savage they brought in, Ronald Darby. So they did add to the backfield after losing Rayshawn Jenkins and Darius Williams. And they also brought in, like I said, Gabe Davis, as well as Devin Duvernay as well. And this is some of the other things that Doug Peterson had to say. These guys know how to win. That's kind of this is about the guys that they brought in. These guys know how to win. That's kind of the influx of talent that we want to bring onto our roster. Guys who've been there and done that. Again, I've got to continue to message the team in the right way. We have to have that confidence and that swagger that you're going to get the job done on game day. I think bringing in some of these free agents this spring is going to help that. And, yeah, I like the Arik Armstead move. And, he talked about how I did do a segment on, with the whole situation of the 49ers releasing him. But, the Jaguars bringing him in, I thought that was a good move. And, we'll see now how that defensive line is. Because, like I said, you got Josh Allen back, you got Trayvon Walker, and now Arik Armstead. So, again, you hope for big things for them in 2024 and be able to get to the quarterback. And the other thing, too, is protecting Trevor Lawrence as well. Because Trevor Lawrence got really banged up towards the end of the year. And, bringing in Mitch Morse helps. I know they signed Ezra Cleveland as well. I think he was one of their free agent acquisition. Well, they re-signed Ezra Cleveland, though. But regardless, that's another important thing is making sure that Trevor Lawrence is protected. And, because he's a franchise guy. And I think some people, they still are waiting to see a little bit more from Trevor Lawrence. For me, I still think, yeah, he's the franchise guy. I think he has that talent. You've seen it. It's just, I think last year was just a rough year. But again, you go into 2024 and, the season doesn't go the way you want it to. Well, and Trevor Lawrence has a bad year. Well, yeah, then there's going to be more questions. Now, if the Jaguars don't have a good year, then I think it's safe to say that Doug Peterson's probably out. And you don't want that if you're a Jaguars fan, because that just, that means you got to go through that search again, because you see how they were Trevor Lawrence's rookie season with Urban Meyer as the head coach. It just was horrible. And then Doug Peterson comes in, and yeah, they didn't get off to the best start, but then they got hot and they were able to make the playoffs. They win the AFC South. They have that huge comeback win against the Chargers, being down, 27-0. And they go up against the Chiefs. They lose, but again, you expected them to take an even bigger jump in 2023. And again, they were kind of like the Eagles, where like they were struggling on offense a little bit to kind of find their identity, but they were winning games despite that. But then things just kind of fell apart. And Trevor Lawrence got hurt, and it's just, then you end up losing that game to the Titans in Week 18, and you miss out in the playoffs. So it just, yeah, not a great end to their season. And now you look towards 2024. And again, losing Ridley was kind of tough, but you bring in Gabe Davis. I mean, it is kind of true, though. Like, you look at their receiving core. You got Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, and Gabe Davis. Those guys are good number 2, number 3 wide receivers. They don't really have that number 1 wide receiver. You got Evan Ingram, who has really become a playmaker for them since he signed from the Giants a couple years ago. But, also, and let's not forget Travis Etienne, too, who's, when he's healthy, he's one of the top running backs in the NFL, and he was having a really good season. Still ended up having a really good season. But in the beginning of the year, he was great. Then as the season progressed, I don't know what happened, but Etienne is one of the top running backs in the NFL. So hopefully he carries that over into 2024. Well, the first half of 2023 into next season. But yeah, the other thing too is the division. The division is going to be tougher. And the Texans, they exceeded expectations. They won the division. They split with the Jaguars, but they ended up winning the division at 10-7. And you got a healthy Anthony Richardson coming back, and the Titans with the moves they made, them getting Ridley from the Jaguars. Yeah, the division's going to be tougher. And I remember in an interview, Trevor Lawrence made a joke about the division and said he hopes that the teams are horrible because that means that they would win the division. But yeah, that's not the case. Well, it was something along the lines of that. I forget what he said exactly, but yeah, he wants to have an easy division. That's not going to be the case in 2024. It's going to be a tough division. The Texans, with all the moves they made, now getting Diggs, and they won the division. So they're looking to repeat as AFC South champs. You got the Colts with Anthony Richardson coming back and hopefully a full year of Jonathan Taylor now. And then, like I said, you got the Titans. Now, again, I probably look at the Titans as that last place team at the moment. But again, this division is going to be competitive. And it's the Jaguars. It's going to be tougher. So, it's going to be a big year for Doug Peterson, big year for Trevor Lawrence. They got to go out there and prove it that collapse was just a fluke. Because if they end up having a bad season, then changes are going to have to be made. But right now, I would look at the Texans as being the favorites, just because of all the moves they made. I mean, how could you not like what the Texans have done this offseason? and over the past couple of seasons now. Now making the right moves at head coach and drafting the right quarterback. I mean, turns out getting the number 2 overall pick instead of the number 1 overall pick ended up working out because C.J. Stroud was unbelievable. So you could thank Lovie Smith and Davis Mills, for winning that game against the Colts to give them. And yeah, that was on like a Hail Mary, and that was on like a 4th and 20 they got that touchdown. I forgot about that. Like, I knew they won the game, but I forgot like how they won the game. And it was like just like on a miraculous play. It was on like like I said, it was on like 4th and 20, and Mills like threw it to I forget the receiver, but they caught it, and they ended up winning the game against the Colts, and that's what gave them the number 2 pick instead of the number 1 pick. And yeah, that was unbelievable, and that's what led to them getting C.J. Stroud, and look where they are now. And it's and you see where they were a couple years ago to now. It's unbelievable how they turned it around so fast. And they were a contender, with Deshaun Watson and Bill O'Brien, but then things fell apart there, and now you got the new regime, and things are looking up in Houston. So, but yeah, for the Jaguars, you're hoping things are up in 2024 because, I mean, they took a step back, and, well, they took a lot more than a step back. Because, again, at one point they were 8-3, and, I mean, I kept saying it. I'm like, oh, yeah, they got the division locked up. That's pretty much it. But then we kept going through the second half of the season, and, they were losing games, and Trevor Lawrence gets hurt. And they ended up missing the playoffs. So let's see how they bounce back in 2024. But again, the division's going to be tougher. And bigger picture, you look at the conference. I mean, how many times do I talk about the AFC and just the gauntlet that it is? Now, again, injuries happen. And teams that you thought were going to be good end up not being good. Some of them at least. And the Jaguars could be that. So, we'll have to see. But for me, I look at the Texans as the favorites. I think right now you could say the Colts are better. Or they're right in that. I mean, I think the Texans are the favorites. And then I got the Titans being that last place team right now. So right now it's, you got the Colts and the Jags. For second and third place. But yeah, then you got to look to the wild card if that's the case. But we'll have to wait and see. So before I go to break again, I just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is gsmcpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So when we come back from our second break of the show, we will talk about Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. Well, we'll talk about Mike Gesicki and his comments on Joe Burrow. And, so that'll be a Bengals segment when we come back from break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.